Before I give some highlights, I wanted to spend a little time just kind of talking about what we actually do, because the term general law is kind of generic, right? And so from most of our sister committees, and there's 14 committees in the House, you can tell exactly what they do by their name. And so you've got the Education Committee, you've got Health, Welfare, and Institutions, and you've got Public Safety. But general laws is a little bit different in that we're a bit of a workhorse and we deal with a whole range of different issues. In fact, I had to write them down because it's hard to go ahead or easy to go ahead and forget exactly all the issues that we cover. But just to give you a little bit of a flavor, we deal with alcohol, we deal with gaming, we deal with procurement, we deal with the Freedom of Information Act, we deal with the regulation of professions and occupations. So anything from a real estate agent to plumbers to cosmetology, if you are licensed as a profession in Virginia, we cover that area. We deal with the administration of government, housing, symbols of the Commonwealth. And so I bet people didn't know that we have a state amphibian. And so if you want to have a state anything, that goes through general laws. Conflict of interests, consumer affairs, and then anything that doesn't fit neatly in one of our other committees. And we even deal with cemeteries. And we had a bill last year that actually addressed whether a person could be buried with their beloved pet. And so that was a real bill. It was a little creepy. And the answer is yes, you may now do that. It is fun to note that general laws is among the oldest of the committees in the entire General Assembly. It traces its roots back to 1677. And it was originally the Committee on Propositions and Grievances, and we changed our name to General Laws in 1901. So this last year, the whole House of Delegates, we met virtually, and that included our committees and our subcommittees. And so we did our job from home or wherever we wanted to go ahead and set up shop. But that did not keep us from addressing some really, really big issues. And so kind of your point, what are the things that we really focused on over the week or over the winter? So one of our biggest priorities was housing. And so, there's been a lot of tough parts about the pandemic, but we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can in order to keep people in their homes, while also realizing that a lot of people are relying on those rental income streams just to go ahead and pay for their own housing and their own businesses. And so it's walking that narrow line. And so we actually passed some really good legislation, I thought, in order to empower our renters to be able to engage in things like payment plans and to help them go ahead and keep in their homes, while also ensuring that ultimately the landlord is made whole. And so any of those kind of issues dealing with housing that came through our committee this year. Last year, we made a really big change to the Virginia Human Rights Act and was very, very proud of what we did last year. It was landmark legislation that added our LGBTQ plus friends and neighbors to the Virginia Human Rights Act and protected them in housing, in employment, and in public accommodations. And so this year we continued on that really, really good work by expanding protections to those with disabilities, and also closed a really big gap by making sure that we're covering domestic workers under those protections as well. So very proud of that. The biggie this year was the legalization and regulation of marijuana. And so we were ground zero of the committees that dealt with this. And so usually a bill goes to one committee, maybe two. If it deals with budgets, it goes to appropriations. This one was so big that it went to actually three committees. And so we deal with the regulation of substances. So we deal with alcohol, we deal with tobacco. And so we dealt with kind of that end, so how would we retail this? Then it went over to courts for enforcement and safety, and then over to appropriations to figure out how any revenue generation would be appropriated and spent. But we were ground zero. We were the first to have an opportunity to look at the governor's proposal and made lots of different changes. And we dealt with everything from how do you design a system to make sure that you're keeping it out of the hands of kids under the age of 21. to regulation of advertising. But the real big one was, how do you make sure that there's an economic equity aspect to this, right? And so you don't want just a couple of really big national companies coming in and gobbling up the entire market. You want to make sure that more people have an opportunity for an economic slice of that pie. And so that bill ultimately went through the House and the Senate and was adopted by the General Assembly. We had over 113 bills referred to our committee this year. Believe it or not, that's actually a little on the light side. We usually deal with even more of those. But the way that we deal with that many pieces of legislation is we've got a really robust subcommittee.